In 404 of the Ming dynasty, the 7th year of the Qianyuan period. Qingzhou, Shunda House, Haishan City. The end of summer is approaching autumn, and although the weather is still hot, it is already somewhat autumnal. Boom! The deafening thunder sounded from far to near, trampling on dark clouds, and from the dark horizon to near. The fine raindrops are connected into a line, from top to bottom, and fall through the air. From the mountains in the distance, the fields nearby, and finally, the black mountain city surrounded by the grey and white city walls, scattered all over the earth. Wow la la, the cold spring rain fell from the eaves, slapped on the few bluestone slabs on the street, and shattered the bones. It's raining again. Yang Yu raised his head slightly, looking at the gloomy sky, not in a good mood. He was wearing a grey linen shirt with patches and holes, and stepping on a pair of straw sandals. Looking at the pouring rain, he felt a little cold. On rainy days, don't go out. This is the common sense of life spread among the residents of the outer city. He has verified it himself, but... Ah, mother-in-law, I'm off to work. With a sigh, Yang Yu took off the bamboo hat on the wall and put it on, and was about to go out. Son, slow down. The grey-haired old woman walked out of the house, held his hand distressedly, shoved an egg into his hand, and told him to be careful on the road. Mother-in-law. Yang Yu knew that he could not quit, so he could only put the egg in his mouth, said something vague, and went out. It is inevitable that there will be sourness in my heart. I was really not a wealthy family in my previous life, but I have never pushed back and forth because of an egg. During the year he was adopted, it wasn't that he didn't think about doing something to improve his life, and finally gave up. In this world, what you want to do is too difficult. Yuck! In the rain, a stench covered the earthy smell, and entered his nose arrogantly, making his eyelids twitch wildly. In the 6 months since he came to this world, what Yang prison couldn't bear the most was not the lack of electricity, internet, and mobile phones. It's the people here who don't talk about hygiene. Defecation is everywhere. It's fine in normal times, but when it rains, it's a disaster. The heavy rain cleans everything, and can easily wash out the excrement of some people and animals in dark corners. That scene is simply terrifying. Of course he doesn't have a fetish for cleanliness, but who can stand it? You must move, move. Yang Yu gritted his teeth, raised his feet carefully, and tried to walk as high as possible. There are not many people in Haishan City in the rain. Some people wipe their bodies in the rain, some people wash farm implements, and of course, some people wash manure buckets. Yang Yu didn't look sideways, he walked timidly through alleys, streets, and squares before he stopped. The inner city has arrived. A low but newly renovated city wall separates the inner and outer cities. Compared with the outer city, the inner city is slightly cleaner, and the facilities such as drainage are also much better. When he got here, his speed was much faster. After a while, you can see the stone lion of the yamen from a distance. The yamen is very old, many places are in disrepair and crumbling, and many places even have weeds. If it wasn't for the pair of stone lions, when Yang prison first came here, he hardly recognized that it was a yamen. Of course, the yamen has money, and there is no shortage of money for maintenance, but who will take out the money to repair the yamen when it can be thrown into his pocket? Officials don't repair yams, but it's not just Haishan Ken that does this. Little prison came very early. Someone greeted him behind him. Yang Yu turned around, and under the same cloak and hat was the same immature face. His name is Zhu Shizhen, and like Yang prison, he is a yamen. Well, I'm afraid the rain will get heavier and heavier. Yang Yu said something casually. Oh, I really envy you. Just guard the warehouse. I'm afraid we will have to patrol the streets. Zhu Shizhen's face was sad and envious. Ha ha. Yang prison forced a smile. They are yamen servants, not officials. It can be said that they are a type of corvée service. They are no different from hard labor and military service. They are real hard work. A few hundred years ago, not only did they have no wages, but they had to provide their own dry food. But with this kind of work, if the old man who adopted him was a jailer, he wouldn't be able to get it at all. Without him, although the yamen is a drudgery, it is possible for him to become a regular. Count the days, a new batch of prisoners will be delivered soon. I hope there won't be any murderers. Zhu Shizhen was a little excited, but also a little worried. Haishan City is a prison city. Most of the prisoners in Shunda Mansion will be sent here. After autumn, they will either be executed on the spot, or they will be sent to Qingzhou Prefecture together with prisoners from other houses. In previous years, there were many murderers who robbed prisons. Along with danger, it is also their hope of turning right. I hope. Yang Yu sighed blankly. From a law student who was about to set foot on a university campus, to a refugee, and now a temporary yamen worker, he collapsed. But he is not without any support. The ding that was suspected to have brought him to this world was still sticking to his stomach like a birthmark. Unfortunately, it is temporarily unavailable. The two of them chatted a few times. There was another case, someone died, and more people got sick recently. Lian Chen's teaching business is not good, and so on. Mostly Zhu Shizhen said. Yang Yu listened quietly. Not long after, the officials at Dian Mao arrived, and after a face-to-face meeting, they went to work on their own. The Yamen's warehouse was very quiet, and after the shift was handed over, Yang Prison completed a day's work in just 1 hour. Naturally, the languages of the past and present are different, but mathematics is universal. This guy in the Yamen warehouse is of course not a problem for him who is just preparing for the college entrance examination. After finishing the work, he took out a tightly wrapped small cloth bag from the corner. Spread out, there is a book and some small stones inside. I hope it's worthy of the stones I eat. Picking up a stone, Yang Yu sighed in his heart and quickly swallowed it with a blank face. It wasn't until he felt an almost imperceptible heat flow in his body that he felt a slight shock. Poor people are rich in martial arts, but people are poor and want to practice martial arts. What should I do? Eat stones. As we all know, a small stone contains a lot of inorganic salts, which is an excellent tonic for a poor man. As long as you eat stones well and fast, you can become a winner in life. A martial arts master is not a dream. Of course this is impossible. Eating too many stones will only cause the stomach to sag. Yang Prison has no habit of self-abuse, and the reason why he eats stones as a snack is all because of the cauldron. The opening of this cauldron requires energy, and the source of this energy is actually limited to soil and stone. In order to open this cauldron, he has been eating stones for a year. On the stone, he opened the book on the case. In this era when most people have never left the world, reading is the only way he can understand the world apart from tavern storytellers. In the past year, he also borrowed several books and gained a preliminary understanding of this era. Unfortunately, it wasn't any dynasty he knew well. In the 404th year of the Ming dynasty, the 7th year of the Qianyuan reign, Qingzhou, Shunda House. It's really a completely unfamiliar world. With a long sigh, Yang Prison put away the book and prepared to finish the morning's work. At this moment, I suddenly heard a loud noise from outside the warehouse, followed by a sound of inhalation and exclamation. Are you dead again? Yang Yu just closed the book and didn't care. Ugh! Zhu Shizhen, who was clad in robes and soaked all over, had already rushed into the warehouse, complaining about the water in the yamen, but his expression was a little dodgy. Who died? Yang Prison put away the book and stood up. Xiaoyu, you have to mourn. You're old man. Zhu Shizhen lowered his voice and revealed that he couldn't bear it. What condolences? What nonsense are you talking about? Yang Yu's heart squeaked, and he stood up, flustered for no reason. I remembered the old jailer who escorted the prisoners to Qingzhou after only one meeting. He had no father or mother in this life. Fortunately, he was adopted by Grandma Yang. After all, that old man who had never been masked could be regarded as his adopted father? Your old man has an accident. I saw someone from your clan come to the yamen before, and I'm afraid that he also got the news of the old man's death. No, not right. It should be the news of the disappearance. Zhu Shizhen said in a low voice, a little afraid to look into Yang Yu's eyes. Missing is equal to death, everyone in the yamen knows that. The reason why he reported missing is because he needs to be comforted when he dies. Missing? Unnecessary. How come? Yang Yu's throat was surging, and his heart was a little blocked. When I first came to this world, I was in a daze. If this old man hadn't taken in him, I'm afraid that he who became a beggar would have already died, right? Humph! Outside the warehouse, there was a cold shout, and a middle-aged man who looked like an iron tower stepped into the warehouse and glanced at Zhu Shizhen coldly. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will pull out your tongue. The king catches the head. Zhu Shizhen was as silent as a cicada, his legs softened a little with fright. Take it, this is Lao Yang's knife. The middle-aged man who looked like an iron tower raised his hand, and a broken knife with a smell of rust had already reached Yang Yu's hand. This knife. Taking the knife, Yang Yu's body trembled. Lao Yang, he really disappeared. He said something cold and hard, and he couldn't help sighing when he saw the young man shaking with the knife. For such a family to lose the pillar, it can be said to be a disaster. For a while, he couldn't say anything, he could only say, "It's me," turned around and left. Wang Zayata walked slowly. Zhu Shizhen breathed a sigh of relief, then glanced at Yang Yu worriedly, turned his head and left. This knife. However, Yang Yu didn't seem to care about the attitude and departure of the two, and muttered to himself in a trance. He held the broken knife in one hand, but covered his chest with the other. Hot. Burn. Hot. Life is between heaven and earth, like the gap between white horses, it's just suddenly. People pass pictures and geese pass marks. After all, there are people who can leave their own traces in the world. Some people use the scroll as a carrier, and even thousands of years have passed, the words can still be seen like faces. Some people pin their thoughts on future generations, and there is still a will to inherit. This knife is similar to this kind of carrier. All sounds are silent. The moment he held the broken knife, Yang Yu could no longer hear any sound, and a frenzy of memories rushed in. Scattered and chaotic, indistinct. The chaotic memories circulated like a revolving lantern, and after a while, it was gradually sorted into words and forms that he could understand and presented in front of his eyes. Get ingredients. Ingredients, broken knife level, inferior, lower, quality, okay, medium, evaluation, ordinary, unremarkable, maybe with a little surprise it can get some microknife skills. Current refining progress, 0/100, do you want to start refining? Finally, is it turned on? Yang Yu's spirit was a little dazed, but his disappointment was more than the surprise of the opening of the ding of gluttony. Thinking of the old man who had only seen him once, but pulled him back from frequent deaths, and the old woman who treated her as a son and asked him warmly. In my heart, 5 flavors are mixed for a while. After a long while, after completely digesting the memory in his mind, Yang Yu barely calmed down and focused on the cauldron of gluttony that only he could see. In the black cauldron, a broken knife could be faintly seen. Refining? Do you mean this broken knife? After refining this knife, you can get some of the old man's knife skills. Looking at the long knife in his hand, Yang Yu felt a little incredible. The knowledge and skills that a person has learned has always been hard work day and night, accumulating bit by bit, and he can get it only by refining it. Give it a try? Yang Yu took a deep breath, put the broken knife away, sat back in his seat, and read the book for a while. It wasn't until his mind completely calmed down that he concentrated on his chest, which had turned from blue to black on the cauldron of gluttony. Refining. Boom! The light and shadow in front of him changed, and in the blink of an eye, it seemed like a different world. Yang Yu shook his head, and there were black holes all over the place. The only light was in his hand, which was a broken knife. Etc. Yang Yu returned to his senses in a trance, looking at the space around him that looked very much like a tripod wall, and then at the broken knife in his hand. He couldn't help but have a thought, this so-called refining, wouldn't it be for me to practice swords here? That's not right. Yang Yu was dumbfounded, this was completely different from what he thought. If, as he thought, this broken knife is the old man's experience with the knife, then how long do you have to practice the knife like this? But no matter how Yang Prison shouted, he didn't get any response. He had no choice but to raise the knife and start practicing. When he raised the knife, he found something strange. With the swing of the broken knife, similar memories and skills would emerge in his mind. Let him use it for comparison. At the same time, a ray of light appeared on the dark wall of the tripod. In refining ingredients, broken knife current progress, 0/100, really? Yang Yu was a little stunned and wanted to cry but had no tears. He thought about countless possibilities after the opening of the Ding of Gluttony, but he alone did not expect such a situation. But under no other choice, he could only grit his teeth, compare the memories in his mind, and swing the knife in the darkness. A knife, another knife. I don't know how long it took, the progress on the tripod wall jumped again, and when it was 10, Yang Yu had just withdrawn from the countless swings of the knife. I sensed the outside world again. Weakness, hunger relief, lethargy. This kind of feeling was like a nightmare from a hangover and a nightmare. For a while, Yang Yu couldn't even lift his hands, and his eyes were even blackened. Oops! How long has it been? Yang Yu was very anxious. At this moment, a whimper with a weeping voice entered his ears, "Pity the old mother, please bless my poor prisoner to wake up early. As long as my son is safe and sound, the old woman is willing to shorten his life by 10 years. The warm cloth wiped her face, and the old woman was crying, praying, and trembling. Mother-in-law. Yang Yu was suddenly startled, and there was a sadness in his heart. The wife who depended on each other just went away. What kind of grief should this old woman be? The old man can't come back, you can't leave your mother-in-law alone. The old woman sobbed and muttered in a low voice. Only then did Yang Yu know that he had been in a coma for 3 days and 2 nights. You this is the talisman water that my mother-in-law begged from Lian Sheng to teach immortals. If you drink it, you will surely wake up. Yang Yuninj could feel his head being lifted up, and a bowl of stench-smelling talisman water was handed to his mouth. Talisman? Can this thing heal? Yang Yu's whole body was resisting, no. Gudong, Gudong. Without saying a word, a bowl of strange-smelling talisman water had already been poured into it. It's over. When his stomach was hot, Yang Yu's heart became cold. Lian Chenjiao, a sect of poor people living in the outer city of Montenegro, said that it can rely on feng shui to save the dead and heal the wounded. But how could he believe this? Yang Yu struggled to get up. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com crouched beside the bed and vomited for a while, and vomited out all the water. Little prison, my little prison. The old woman couldn't care less about the talisman water that she had asked for a lot of money. She hugged Yang Prison and burst into tears. Mother-in-law, I'm fine. Looking at the old woman who was much older than before, Yang Yu felt sad in his heart, and was afraid that she would break her body by crying, so he hurriedly said, Mother-in-law, I'm hungry. Mother-in-law is going here. The old woman quickly wiped away her tears and brought the prepared food. You have been in a coma for 3 days, first drink some chicken soup, eat slowly, there is not enough. Did you stew the old hen? Only then did Yang Yu smell the chicken soup, and his stomach began to beat immediately. The city of Haishan is located in a remote area, and its products are not rich. In other words, the life of the poor is extremely bad. Although Mr. Yang is a jailer, he has no extra income because of his honesty and duty. The family has a few old hens, but the lifeblood of the old woman is the same. There are 3 more, one is not too hard to stew, and the other is not too hard. The old woman's eyes were dim, the old man is gone, 3 chickens are enough. Yang Yu was silent, not knowing how to comfort him, he could only drink the chicken soup silently. When the old woman went to clean up the dishes, Yang Yu lay down again, and as soon as he closed his eyes, he saw the unfamiliar and familiar big cauldron again. The cauldron was dark, but there was a hint of blue on the edge. It turned blue. Yang Yu's heart suddenly felt a little ominous. This cauldron was originally blue, but it turned black after eating the stone for a year. After using it once, will it turn back? Then don't you want to eat soil? The morning light broke the dawn. A red sun rises from the east, patrolling the 4 directions, illuminating the heaven and earth, and sweeping away the haze caused by the heavy rain. Refining will consume my physical strength, and I will not stop when my physical strength is exhausted, but to achieve a certain goal. Preliminary guess, it is 10 progress each time. But maybe, there is no single proof, and it needs to be tried and verified. Blind hacking will not increase progress, it is useless effort. 10 progress may be equivalent to the old man practicing swords for 3 years. In reality, practicing the sword will also increase the progress, but the effect is far less than the refining of the gluttonous cauldron, and the body of the broken sword has not disappeared. The cauldron of gluttony will fade, and maybe it will return to its original color when the progress is full. So, how to solve the problem of eating soil? What does the cauldron of gluttony need? Is it soil and stone, or the metal substance contained in it? If it is the latter, how to find other ingredients? Under the slightly dazzling sunlight, Yang Prison was writing at his desk, sorting out his gains and guesses, and summarizing his gains and losses. This is a habit of his previous life. Hey! He filled a stone into his stomach and felt the familiar warmth spread, and Yang Yuki let out a long sigh. After a night of combing, he already had a preliminary understanding of the function and taboo of the gluttonous cauldron. There are many problems, and there are many uses. Randomly smashed the graffiti paper and threw it in the corner. Yang Yu got up and held the broken knife hanging on the wall in his hand. Immediately, a familiar feeling flooded into my heart, along with the skill of using a knife that was deeply imprinted in my mind. Yes, it's just a skill, not even a knife technique. Missing is equal to death. The old man is only afraid that the bad luck will be less. The sun fell on the blade, reflecting Yang Prison's slightly sad face. Outside the city, it is very dangerous. Not only are there wild beasts and beggars fleeing from the famine, but also because of bandits. Qingzhou is located on the frontier of Daming. Compared with other states, it is much more chaotic. A very old jailer, even if he doesn't die, is there any good? Boom! Bang bang bang! At this moment, a rapid knock on the door accompanied by a sharp voice broke the calm in the courtyard. Second aunt, open the door, open the door. It's me, Yunhua. Hey, here we come. When Yang Yu frowned, Grandma Yang had already put on her clothes and stepped forward to open the door. As soon as the door opened, a woman entered. She was in her 30s, wearing inferior blush and greeting her in a sharp voice. Behind her, there were a few simple and honest middle-aged men. These people. Yang Yu frowned. These people seem to be relatives of his family, but they don't seem to have moved around for many years. Now come to the door. Why are you all here? After tossing and turning all night, Granny Yang's face was not very good looking. Auntie, the family also knows about the second uncle. We came here this time to take care of the funeral for his old man. The woman sighed, second uncle, he has never enjoyed any blessings in his life, and he will have a good time when he dies. What do you think? Afterwards. Granny Yang's face turned pale and her body swayed. Your second uncle is just missing, he will come back, he will come back. In the end, her voice lowered. Second aunt. The woman stepped forward and took Granny Yang's hand. You don't know how the yamen is doing? How could Lu Sanchi be willing to give his second uncle a favor? Yes, second aunt. It's been a while, but it can't be delayed any longer. Those guys also agreed. This. Granny Yang was at a loss and felt helpless. Second aunt, what are you hesitating about? You nod your head. In the future, your niece-in-law will do it properly. Don't worry about it. Seeing that Granny Yang seemed to be persuaded, the woman's tone became a little more gentle, but her voice was sharp, which made the listener extremely uncomfortable. Not only do we have to do this, we have to do it in a big way. At this time, someone else joined. That is. The middle-aged woman first nodded, then became alert, glanced at it, and saw a pale boy leaning on the door, staring at her coldly. Looking coldly at a few relatives in the hospital, Yang Yu only felt a fire in his heart. He has been human in 2 lifetimes, and he is not only a country boy after all. How can he not know what the purpose of these people is? Eat it. He once heard that if a man in a family dies, people from the same family will come to the door, and the valuables in the family will be looted, and the pots and pans will not be pulled down. Even under the pretense of mourning, he would come to the house every day, forcing the family to set up a water table, to keep it on, and to invite everyone to come and eat this family completely. Until the property and land were handed over, the woman was forced to leave, and she even hanged herself. According to legend, Lu Rushi, a famous prostitute of a generation, was forced to hang herself at home, but even so, her family wealth was still taken away after her death. Yang Yu never imagined that one day he would encounter such a thing. Is this the little prison? The woman's face froze, she hurriedly squeezed out a smile. I haven't seen you for a year, and you are already an adult. Little prison. Granny Yang breathed a sigh of relief, hurriedly broke free from the woman's palm, and took a few steps back. Mother-in-law. Yang Yu glanced at a few people in the courtyard before looking at the old woman, and said warmly, choose a suitable day, and let the old man's funeral be done. Can. Granny Yang hesitated, but seeing Yang Yu's firm gaze, she could only nod her head. Little prison is absolutely right. The woman thought that there would be ups and downs in this matter, but when she saw that it seemed to be done, she was overjoyed. Why do you need to pick a day? Today is the best day. Not today. Yang Yu shook his head. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com saw the woman's face was not worried, so he said, even if it doesn't help, we have to wait for the Yaman's pension to come down. After a pause, he added, Wang Zayata promised me about this. Wang catch the head. The woman was stunned for a moment, her eyes rolled, and she hesitated, but the Yaman wants to procrastinate, what if it takes a year and a half? I can't wait. Yang Yu's eyes turned cold, and he gritted his teeth before he suppressed the fire. After 3 days, the pension will come down. Even if it doesn't, the old man's funeral will still be done. That. The woman hesitated for a moment. Seeing that the men had no opinion, she nodded in agreement. Ugh. After sending off a few people, Grandma Yang sighed and became more and more haggard. Xiao, how can this be? After living most of her life, how could she not know the purpose of these people? But do you know what else to do? The family's fields and even the house are all registered in the clan, and even if they sue the official, they cannot win. Mother-in-law, give me the land deed and the house deed together. After closing the door heavily, Yang Yu's anger did not disappear. For a moment, he wished he could kill these people with a knife. But she killed these people and others, and if she was caught, my mother-in-law would really have no hope. Do you want to sell these fields? It doesn't work. These land deeds and house deeds are all registered in the clan, and no one will accept them. The old woman shook her head again and again. Yang Yu gritted his teeth, but smiled. Sell it to them, of course they don't want it. But what if you give it to them? Haishan City has two inner and outer cities. The inner city is the original urban area of Haishan City, and the outer city is a mixed place where the nearby villages have migrated over the years. Not only dirty, but messy. It's fine during the day, but at night, few people in the outer city dare to go out alone. Yang Prison works in the yamen. Although he is only a temporary yamen, he has not heard much about killing people and stealing goods. So, as soon as the evening came and the stalkers left, Yang Prison carried the house deed, land deed, and went out with a broken knife. The traces of the heavy rain a few days ago are still there, and the road is still a little muddy. Yang Prison carefully walked through the alley, avoiding the rogues wandering in the alley, and walked towards the inner city. There are many forces in the outer city, and there are large sects like the Liansheng sect. But you can't trade with them. Yang Yu was calm and thought about it carefully. A year is enough for him to have a general understanding of the city of Montenegro. Compared with the chaotic outer city, the inner city is much better. At least it won't look so ugly. Woo-hoo. On the way, Yang Prison could faintly hear the sound of someone choking, and many people were hanging white cloths. It's dead again. Yang Yu sighed in his heart and quickened his pace. There must be vultures hovering in the land of carrion, eating dead households. Not only his family will encounter it. Before the inner city closed, Yang Yu entered the inner city, turned a few streets and came to an alley. In this year of time travel, it's not that he didn't do anything. Whenever he had free time, he didn't go to Mongolia to study and learn Chinese characters. I came here to learn martial arts. Of course, this is not a martial arts gym. With his family's background, he cannot afford the high tuition fees. Everyone knows that the poor are rich in martial arts, but in fact, there is no relationship between ordinary people and ordinary people. Dong dong dong, the door was not closed, but Yang Prison knocked on the door and walked into the yard lightly. A person's back has 24 bones, and there may be differences between men, women, and children, but they are not too different. Beheading with a knife requires recognizing the bones. This is craftsmanship, and it is also compassion. Everything goes away when a person dies. When a person commits a crime, he has his own laws and regulations. Let's act according to our orders, and we will not harm the virtues of yin and the principles of heaven. We just need to remember. One stab, one can only and one must. One stab is the practice, two stabs, that is brutal killing. It really hurts yin's morality and hurts the principles of heaven. This is the biggest rule in our business. Inside the grey-white courtyard wall, a group of teenagers squatted in the corner, holding wooden knives in both hands, with stones falling from their wrists and knives. The autumn day is already cold, and the evening is even cooler, but several people are dripping with sweat. An old man was sitting on a wooden chair, staring at the group of young men, and reprimanded them from time to time. The old man was quite old, the hair under the hood was already grey, and his face was covered with frost and wrinkles. In his arms, there was a grey and dull old monkey squatting. The dry old hand kept stroking the back of the old monkey's neck. Hey! Yang Yu stood outside the courtyard without stepping forward, quietly listening to old man Wei scolding his disciples. This lame old Wei is very famous in Haishan City. It is said that he joined the army with the villagers when he was young. After returning from a serious injury, he became an executioner again. Now some executioners in Haishan City are his apprentices. Not counting his participation in the army, in the past few years alone, nearly 100 people have been beheaded by him. Is a real ruthless character. Yang Yu didn't speak, and quietly watched these young men practice swords. These young people came earlier than him. Some have been practicing for 7 or 8 years, and some have been training for 3 or 4 years. Only after 3 years of chores can carry a wooden knife. This is old Wei's rule. Yang Yuman has not been able to count for less than a year, so naturally he has listened to the reprimand, but he has not touched the knife yet. It's a good practice. If you learn this thing, don't say too much. At least 3 meals a day, with a tile to cover your head, at worst, you won't end up on the streets eating dirt. Old Man Wei reprimanded his disciples slowly, and at the end, he also glanced at Yang prison. Living on the streets and eating dirt. Yang Yu smiled bitterly, isn't that what he's talking about? More than a year ago, he woke up from this world and became a little beggar with no parents and no mother. If he hadn't been adopted by the old Yang Tu couple, he would have literally starved to death outside the city. People are dying of starvation, they really can eat anything. He has really eaten dirt. Many people look down on our business, but we obey orders and rely on our ability to eat. How can we shame people? Old Wei stood up, holding the monkey and pacing, 1 foot deep and the other shallow, wanting to walk around the house. Eat, don't be shabby, let the old parents starve to death on the street, that's called shabby. Yang Yu's face was sullen, and he followed silently. If you have something to say, say it. When the old man waved his hand, the old monkey made a few squeaks and ran up to the old locust tree in the courtyard. I knew I couldn't hide it from the teacher. The light in the room was even dim. Yang Yu slightly bowed his head and smiled bitterly, explaining his purpose. Yu Guang glanced over the decorations in the house and landed on the case in the middle of the house. On the case, there is a large sword without a sheath. The sword was broad and square, with a thick back and a broad face. The hilt was carved with a ghost head. The snow was white and clear, but it couldn't hide the smell of blood. It was chilling to look at. Yang Yu recognized that this knife was the beheading knife held by Old Man Wei to behead nearly 100 people. On weekdays, Old Man Wei regarded it as a treasure, and would never let others touch him even once. In the past, although Yang Yu was envious, he didn't have much thought, but at this time, his heart skipped a beat. Could this ghost-headed sword be also an ingredient? Old Man Wei picked up the teacup and sat upright. Hearing the words, he replied calmly, the Yang family is nothing, but why does this old man want to buy these acres of real estate, to cause trouble? It's not buying, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is giving it away. Yang Yu gave up his luck and gritted his teeth. Directly took out the house deed and land deed together, and slapped it directly on the table. Old Man Wei is the trade partner he had long thought of. First, this old Wei is not afraid of those relatives of the Yang family at all, and secondly, he is studying under him. Although not a master and apprentice, in the end there is some kind of incense love. Compared with others, it is a lot better after all. Oh! Old Man Wei glanced at Yang Yu in surprise, and then sneered, is it the puppy who sells Yetian, doesn't he feel bad? Old Yang Tiu has accumulated these things and can use them for most of his life. No matter how many things there are, it's useless if you can't keep them. Yang prison is quite sober. Rather than being eaten and wiped up by those so-called relatives, he would rather give away these fields and make a deal that is beneficial to him. He has a lot of disciples. He doesn't believe that this old man really disregarded his face and took these things in vain. The old man underestimated you, this kid. Old Man Wei put down the teacup and took a deep look at Yang Yu. He wasn't very impressed with this kid who came under his sect. What he remembered most clearly was that this kid once ate dirt. At this time, I was really surprised. Yang Yu lowered his head and said nothing. He picked up Tian Qi, pondered for a while, and then said, what do you call me, teacher? Of course, the old man will not ask you for these things in vain. In this way, your apprenticeship for the past 2 years will be exempted. From tomorrow, let's practice swords with them. Hey! When the boulder fell to the ground in his heart, Yang Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, master. In the guest room, Yang prison had not slept for a long time. He simply turned over and sat up, took out the broken knife, and began to practice knife tricks. Saying it was a sword move would not be accurate. Something more basic than basics, like holding a knife. There are overhand, reverse, left, right, oblique, etc. types of knives. According to each way of holding knives, there are basic stances and skills. Yang Prison is naturally holding the hilt. The broken knife swept across the moonlight that shone into the house. Yang Yu's eyes were bright, and many skills were imprinted in his mind, which could be compared from time to time. It's a pity that I can't see the progress bar. Unhurriedly using the skills in his mind one by one, Yang Yu subconsciously glanced at the wall, thinking with regret. But it didn't take long for him to immerse himself in it and forget about the chores. It wasn't until his body felt aches and pains that he realized that the sky had actually lighted up. Is this the end of the night? Yang Yu shook his numb palm, shaking in his heart. He was quite sure that he had never had such a level of concentration before. In the past, even if he really wanted to accomplish something, he could not help but desert. Although it's not a 3-minute heat, it's impossible to focus on this level. Did the previous refining improve my concentration? Yang Yu guessed while relaxing his muscles and bones. He couldn't feel tired or timed in the tripod. Thinking about it at this time, he was afraid that it would last for a long time. Maybe it's not that you become focused, but a habit? Involuntarily, he wanted to try refining here again, but now is not the time. If he is in a coma for a few days, it will be very troublesome. There is no strict system for Old Man Wei to learn martial arts, and it can even be said that it is very loose. Wei he doesn't care when to come, when to leave, or when to practice. Most of the time, he hugged the old monkey and leaned on the chair as if he was sleeping, but if he did something wrong, he would scold him in time. Yang Yu knew that there was no way out. Wei he is not a martial arts hall after all. Those who come to him to learn martial arts come here in their spare time. Most of the time, they still have to go to work. There are only 2 or 3 people who can come to practice for a few hours every day. Like before Yang Prison, 3 or 5 days a month is not bad. This time, there is another entry for junior and junior high school students, so I will tell you 2 more words for you. When Yang Yu came to the courtyard, he heard Old Man Wei's voice, and he hurriedly walked to the back of several brothers and stood still. Wei he let go of the old monkey, hobbled and stomped together. There is a saying that you can only enter weapons if you are familiar with fists and feet, but most of you don't have this condition. Learning fists and feet is much more expensive than weapons. Yang Yu listened intently, knowing that Old Man Wei was talking to him. You need to practice your fists and feet, not to mention the medicinal wine, ointment and medicinal oil you need, just the daily tonic, you can't afford it. Wei He's voice was not loud, but everyone in the small courtyard could hear it clearly. Some people nodded. But Yang Yu is clear that the cost of practicing a sword is not small, not to mention other things. An ordinary sword, the asking price is 3 taels of silver. With his monthly money in the yamen, he could afford it without food or drink for 2 years. And this is not even daily maintenance. Weapons need maintenance, but not only throw them aside when not in use, but also grind them when they are in use. Since you have entered the door of the old man, you must also know that the old man was born in the army and started a family of beheading people, so these are the things that can be handed over to you. Wei he lightly swept over the disciples and stopped for a moment on Yang Prison. What did the master say? Who in the city of Montenegro doesn't know your reputation? If I can learn from you, my disciples will never be able to use it. Such a blatant slap on the horse made everyone look at him involuntarily. Yang Yu turned his head and spoke to a burly middle-aged man with a face full of flesh. He recognized that this was the butcher Hu Wan, from the outer city. He is also one of 2 or 3 people who can come to practice martial arts every day. It doesn't matter whether it's on the battlefield or beheading, you don't need so many fancy moves. You just need to hold the words steady, accurate, and ruthless, then it's not a problem to be based in Montenegro. Wei he waved his hand, come here, someone. Hey, I'm coming. Hu Wan, whose face was full of flesh, was the first to rush forward with a foolish smile on his face. But in the next moment, his smile froze. Oh, oh. Master, keep it light. Hey! What a lot of strength! Off the field, Yang Yu was taken aback. This burly stature was full of flesh, and he was afraid that he was not a big man weighing around 200 pounds. Just like that, he was lifted by the back of his neck by the thin and dry old man. There is no need to say more about the word steady. You have cut tofu for years, and most of you are good enough to get started. Next, what I have to say is accurate. He held Hu Wan with one hand and gestured up and down with the other. One knife can save 3 points of effort, and never a single effort is wasted. There are more than 200 bones in the human body, some are hard, some are soft. If you are fighting against someone, and you are slashing at the sky with one sword, or 2 or 3 bones under the neck, then it will not be the same. He talked eloquently. Speaking of this, the little old man's eyes became brighter. It makes sense. Yang Yu's teeth were sour when he heard that. This old man is definitely a murderer. Hold the knife with a steady hand, and be accurate in chopping. He pointed and said that where the bones are hard and the bones are soft, there is force and there is no force. What he said was straightforward, but many people off the court felt uncomfortable listening to it, including Yang Yu. This is a way to kill people, it's like cutting vegetables. Teacher, master. Quick, let me down. He was teaching, but Hu Wan couldn't stand it any longer. His face was flushed red, and he felt that his neck was no longer his own. You can't bear any hardship at such a young age. Hei's face sank, and he threw Hu Wan on the ground. Cough. Cough cough. The burly man coughed for a while, almost out of breath, regretted for a while, and made fun of himself. Never mind. After being interrupted by this, he stopped talking, waved his hand, and said, Hu Wan, you are the most free here, you should send your junior brother Yang prison back. Having said this, he paused again. After dinner, go back to your house. What? Hu Wan was a little puzzled, but seeing He staring at him, he hurriedly agreed. Thank you, master. Yang Yu bowed and was grateful. Let's go. Hu Wan rubbed his neck and grinned. This kid didn't come back overnight. Outside the city gate of the inner city, several men were squatting on the side of the road, looking irritable. They also didn't expect that a half-daughter boy would dare to hang out in the evening, and he didn't return all night without being driven out by the inner city patrol. Hey! Brother 6, that kid is out. The slightly skinny boy's eyes lit up and he looked at the city gate. Let me wait for a long time, you little bastard. Wang Lu grinned and got up. Wait, Brother 6, wait. Just as Wang Lu was about to step forward, he was suddenly dragged by his younger brother. He turned around and glared at him. The little man swallowed nervously, his calf spinning. You, look next to that kid. Is that hairy man butcher Hu? Hu Wan is very rich. This is Yang Prison's first impression of this senior brother Hu. There are 3 major districts in the outer city of Montenegro, and each district has a butcher, and Hu Wan is the butcher in his district. Not only is he burly like a furry bear, but his 20 or 30 men are also big-bodied and powerful. Even some small gangs in the outer city dare not provoke them. Hey! As soon as he left the inner city gate, Yang Prison heard his senior brother Hu sneer, Junior brother Yang, are you being targeted? Wang Lu. Yang Prison can see and recognize those people standing guard here in a dignified manner. The tallest one among them, Wang Lu, was the concubine of the woman who went to his house that day. He usually beats chickens and scolds dogs. Look! Hu Wan smiled hee, opened his voice and called out the who were about to run away, Grandson, come here, Grandpa. Wang Liu's body froze, turned his head, his face was even uglier than crying. Wang Lu has seen Big Brother Hu. Big brother is also your name. Before he finished speaking, Hu Wanpu's big hand like a fan had already covered Wang Liu's face, and the nosebleed mixed with his teeth flew out. My name is Hu Yat. Hey Wang Lu was beaten to the ground, and he cried out, Hu, Master Hu, you, why did you beat me? Why? Grandpa can't beat you. Hu Wang kicked again, and Wang Lu rolled around a few times, only to feel black in front of his eyes, and was almost kicked to death. The two wars that the rest of the watched, not to mention the fact that they didn't even dare to run. They also bully honest people. When they meet a big butcher like Hu Wan, how can they get tough? Grandpa Hu, don't fight. Wang Lu was stunned by the beating, lying on the ground and begging for mercy, his crotch was wet. Does like pigs and dogs dare to eat people? Hu Wan had a look of disgust, and the thick yellow phlegm spat on Wang Liu's face, and kicked Wang Lu into the air with another kick. Fuck you motherfucker. Wang Lu groaned for a while, but he couldn't even get up. She was supported by two and walked away with a miserable howl. Thank you, brother Hu. Yang Yu hurriedly clasped his fists and thanked him, feeling relieved in his heart. Thank you for what? I'll help you at this time. This kind of pig and dog is the most difficult thing to deal with. If you want to solve it, you have to look at yourself. Hu Wanyi waved his hand. If you want to thank you, just thank the old man. Yang Yu nodded, and was careful in his heart. He and Hu Wan had only met a few times, and this time he made the move because Wei He had instructed him that if he wanted to solve the threat, he had to look at himself. Don't worry too much. Seeing that Yang Yu didn't speak, Hu Wan said again, most of these are poor, and they hang out with ruthless characters. After you practice for a few days, they won't dare to provoke you. Along the way, Yang Yu didn't miss this opportunity. He asked Hu Wan about swordsmanship skills, and also inquired about some things in the outer city. He had to walk a few streets, and when he was about to reach the square, Hu Wan suddenly stopped and pulled Yang Yu into an alley. Yang Yu was stunned for a moment, then saw a high platform erected at some point in the square. An old man who looked like a fairy was talking about something. Under the high platform, a large group of people were standing or sitting. They were old and young, male and female, but they didn't make a sound. It looked very strange. I can't stay in this outer city, I can't stay. Hu Wan muttered, his face a little ugly, your mother, even Lao Tzu's brothers have been pulled in. Evil door, evil door. Hu Wan even talked about two evil sects and took Yang prison to deter, but he didn't even dare to fight in person. Senior brother Hu is very afraid of this Lian Chenjiao. Yang Yu's heart moved. In the past 6 months, this is the first time he has seen someone who hates Lian Sheng sect. The rest, including his mother-in-law, think that this sect treats sickness and saves people, and it is a good sect. Over time, he almost thought he was too suspicious. Seeing Hu Wan's face full of fear at this time, he couldn't help asking questions. Is Lao Tzu afraid of him? Hu Wan's face sank, and he denied it. After scanning the surroundings, he lowered his voice and said, this Lian Sheng sect is very evil. Aren't they healing and saving people? Yang Prison pretended not to understand. Can you heal and save people by burning a few talismans? If you have the ability, don't you go to serve the emperor, but come to see a doctor for us who are suffering. Hu Wan sneered hee and said, in our outer city, more people died of illness this year than in previous 3 or 5 years, and they were all young people. Haha. Speaking of which, Hu Wan suddenly stopped, and Yang Yu raised his head suddenly, only to see outside the alley, a man dressed in white as if wearing sackcloth and filial piety was leading a group of people passing by. The leader also glanced at Hu Wan. So close. Hu Wan was gasping for breath, with beads of sweat on his forehead. Seeing Yang Yu's strange eyes, he was also a little annoyed. If it wasn't for Lao Tzu who exchanged blood a few days ago, he would have led people to overthrow this bird sect. Yang Yu originally asked the question out of curiosity, but after hearing Hu Wan's words, he immediately caught the important point: exchange blood. You don't know? By the way, you're just getting started. Hu Wan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead, and didn't want to move for a while, so he simply leaned against the wall to rest for a while. Let's practice martial arts, whether it's knives or punches. In the end, it depends on who is fast and powerful. But the body is polished to a certain extent, and if you want to increase it, you have to exchange blood. Exchange blood. Hearing Hu Wan's words, Yang Yu's eyes lit up. At this time, he recalled that Hu Wan was a tall man, but Wang Lu was also a man of 7 feet, but he was beaten like a son by Hu Wan and could not fight back. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. As for Hu Wan's 200 pound body, Old Man Wei lifted it up with one hand. At the time, he was a little surprised, but now he was a little surprised. It turned out to be a blood exchange. Senior brother, how can we exchange blood? Yang Prison asked. Do you want to exchange blood? Do you know how many medicinal herbs are needed to exchange blood? My father killed pigs for 30 years, and I killed pigs for more than 10 years. That's it, a blood exchange almost caused a famine, just you. Hu Wan shook his head repeatedly. You're poor and rich, do you think you're just talking about it? Yang Yu didn't speak, just squeezed the stones in his pocket. There are no herbs, maybe stones, okay? Okay, you should ask the old man about these things. Seeing that Yang Yu had to ask questions, Hu Wan felt a little overwhelmed, waved his hand, and left the alley. Exchange blood, exchange blood. Yang Yu chewed these 2 words over and over, and a great longing came into his heart. In this world, it is really better to rely on people than on yourself. If he is strong, how can Wang Lu also dare to eat his own family? As evening approached, Hu Wan, who had had a few bites, was sent away. Yang Yu closed the door and came to the kitchen with a cloth bag. He got a pot to boil water, and then poured several bags full of selected stones into the pot to cook. After tossing and washing many times, the water was empty. Picked it up, packed it, and carried it back to the room. Isn't it just eating rocks? Eat. Yang Yu closed the doors and windows, and placed the boiled stones in bags on the head of the bed, before laying on the bed and closing his eyes. Gritting his teeth, he called out the cauldron of gluttony. Refining. After eating the stone for a year, Yang Yu of course knew that if the stone was swallowed, it would be absorbed by the cauldron of gluttony, and would not stay in his stomach. Only a wisp of heat will be left to spread throughout the body to replenish physical strength. But a stone is a stone in the end, the taste is very bad, and the voice is still snarling, and it is definitely not a person who can like it. Therefore, in the past, even if he knew that it was to start the cauldron of gluttony, Yang Yu had a lot of resistance in his heart. But at this moment, lying on the bed, he had a sullen face, as if he was eating fried beans. He quickly ate a bag of stones to the bottom. After eating, his whole body was hot, and he closed his eyes. The light and shadow changed, and Yang Prison came to the dark cauldron again. Different from the first time, looking at the progress bar on the wall of the tripod, he felt a sense of peace in his heart, and a great sense of security flowed in his heart. It seems that the outside world can also affect the progress bar. Looking at the decimal point after the progress bar, Yang Yu was thoughtful. Without delaying, he picked up the only thing in the tripod, broke the knife, and began to wave the knife according to the memory in his mind. Swing the knife again. Soon, he was immersed in it, forgetting the passage of time. Yang Yu found that after he had the foundation, his refining became faster, and he had already woken up overnight. This also means that his refining of broken blade has reached 1/5. The old man really isn't a master. Yang Yu woke up, looked at the sky that was about to light up, and thought in his heart, Old Man Wei is not bad. The essence of swordsmanship is really only steady, accurate, and ruthless. Maybe you need to add a quick word. Unhurriedly, he ate another half bag of stones, and then Yang Yu got up, cleaned up a little, then got up to make a fire, wash rice, and cook. When the sky just came up, I informed my mother-in-law, and got up and went to the inner city. At the Yamen, Yang Prison took a long vacation and got up early. Naturally he was going to Old Man Wei's place. After a night of refining, his spirit is still very good, he has eaten enough stones, and his physical strength is even more abundant. The fly in the ointment is that. His voice was hoarse. A stone is a stone, even if it is boiled, it still hurts the throat. Little brat, are you here so early? Hearing the knock on the door, Wei he scolded and shouted, Prosperity, open the door. Squeaky the half-white-haired old monkey jumped down from the tree to open the door, and then slapped his teeth and claws at Yang Prison for a while before returning to the tree. Yang Yu gave a wry smile and entered the door. Old Man Wei was yawning, and swearing in his clothes, he went out the door. Seeing that it was Yang Yu, it was not surprising. He pointed to the kitchen, go and push the tofu in the kitchen, remember, make it thinner. Yes. Yang Prison responded with a hoarse voice. Although he did not come many times during his one-year apprenticeship, he also pushed tofu. This is one of the ways to practice steadiness. Before, he was not happy to do this job, but now that he thinks about it, he feels that he is making a big mistake. The sword is unstable, even if you practice the sword technique, it is of no use. Don't use a kitchen knife. Old Man Wei suddenly spoke up, pointed to a large knife outside the firewood room, and said, use that one. What? Yang Yu was a little dumbfounded. The knife was not for chopping wood, but for Huan to train his strength. I'm afraid it might not have to weigh 30 to 50 pounds. Use this knife to cut tofu? What? Are you afraid? Wei he glanced at Yang Yu lightly, the ones you handed in are enough for you to study for a year. After a year, you won't be my disciple anymore. There are not many people who come to Weha to learn martial arts. Compared to other martial arts halls, they can even be said to be deserted. The reason for this is not only because of his status as an executioner, but also because his fees are very expensive. Apprentices are more expensive, and disciples are even more expensive. And it's still a year. It is precisely because he charges too much, and he only pushes tofu, winter melon, and chopping firewood every day, so Yang Prison will come less and less before. Paying money for others to do chores, this is a matter of previous life, but it will be hung from the street lamp. Okay. Yang Yu took a deep breath and stepped forward to reach for the big sword. It's so heavy, how do you cut tofu? Yang Yu's expression changed. His physique is much stronger than that of teenagers of the same age, so he can't afford to lift the 50-pound knife, but it takes a lot of effort to walk. How to push tofu? Hurry up! Wei he yawned and urged. No choice, Yang Yu could only grit his teeth and walk into the kitchen. Wei he's yard is not very big. Apart from the small martial arts training ground in the main yard, the biggest one is the kitchen. At this time, on a chopping board like the door panel, there were at least 300 to 500 kilograms of tofu. It's all cut. Wei he gave an order and went straight back to the house. Hey! Putting the big knife down, Yang Yu eased his arm, took a deep breath, and then lifted the big knife horizontally to make it parallel to his forearm. Start cutting the tofu. With two knife skills of refining, Yang Yu naturally had no problem pushing tofu, but after cutting 10 pieces, he couldn't stand it anymore. Put down the knife and gasped for a while. No, it's too heavy. Yang Yu leaned on the big knife and saw that there was no one around. He swallowed a few stones one after another, regained his stamina a little, and started to push again. In this way, over and over again, when all the tofu was pushed into thin slices, Yang Prison was almost paralyzed on the ground, sweating like pulp. Swallowing a stone can restore a small amount of physical strength, but this is a stone, not a fairy bean, and muscle soreness will still exist. After resting for a while, Yang Yu walked out of the kitchen dragging the knife. At this time, there were a few people scattered in the yard. Hu Wan was among them, and he was recommending Shi Nian to train his strength. Seeing Yang Prison dragging the knife out of the kitchen, he immediately smiled, "Junior brother Yang, can I use this knife well?" Before Yang Prison could answer, Wei He's scolding was already heard in the house. "What? This gave up." Dang bang! Yang Yu dropped the knife and rubbed his wrist. "It's all cut." "Finished." Wei He jumped out angrily and scolded, "You brat won't ruin this old man's tofu, right?" While he was talking, he had already entered the kitchen. Yang Yu looked at it, his eyes lit up slightly. Wei He was in his 60th year and limped again, but the speed was very fast and smooth. Could it be something like Qing Gong? Yang Yu forgot the pain in his body and felt a little itchy in his heart. If there is a martial art that he most wants to learn, it must be Qing Gong, but I don't know if there is the kind of Qing Gong he imagined. "You cut this all?" When he went out again, Wei He's face sank, and he looked at Hu Wan. "Can you help?" "No, no, no." Hu Wan staggered, and Shi Nian almost smashed his face. "Did you really cut it?" Wei He's complexion improved, but he was still a little incredulous. Although pushing tofu is only basic skills, this kid's basic skills are a little too solid. "Yes." Yang Yu's heart was slightly tight, but he still nodded. He didn't have any thoughts of hiding his clumsiness. First, his tricks were nothing in the crowd. Second, his current situation was not suitable for hiding clumsiness. Only by showing yourself properly can you be valued by others. "Junior brother Yang, did you use my knife to push the tofu? Are you finished?" Hu Wan came back to his senses, put down the stone roller, and went to the kitchen to take a look. When he looked back at Yang Yu, his eyes changed. "Good boy, I actually missed my eyes." With his own knife, Hu Wan certainly knew how difficult it would be to push tofu with this knife. He has 10 years of experience in slaughtering pigs, but it took him 3 years to push tofu with this knife. After all, Yang Yuman has learned the knife for a year, right? Not bad. Seeing that the disciples were all crowding around, Wei He reluctantly commented, and Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com turned towards the room. "Come early tomorrow, you don't need to cut tofu." Yang Prison nodded hurriedly. Turning his back, Wei He stroked his beard, but his eyes were still a little puzzled. Why didn't I realize that this kid is still a genius? The next day, Yang Yudu spent time with Hu Wan and the others, either working hard or practicing swordsmanship, and staying home until the evening. "The small bag of stones that I was carrying has been eaten clean." That night, Yang Prison was still refining the broken sword. Perhaps it was because of the foundation, or because it was difficult to get started, but it was easier after that. Yang Prison's refining progress was advancing by leaps and bounds. Soon, it was more than half. And because of the crazy eating of stones these days, the cauldron of gluttony did not continue to fade, which made Yang Yu feel relieved. After a night of silence, Yang Prison was the first to arrive early the next morning. Although Wei He said he didn't need to cut the tofu, he still went into the kitchen and paid the price of a bag of stones to cut all the hundreds of caddies of tofu. Wei He was holding the old monkey basking in the sun, and when he saw Yang Prison come out, he made a random gesture and motioned him to come over. "If your hand is steady, your head will be guaranteed." Wei He swayed the reclining chair, half squinted his eyes and said, "Last time, what did I say about the third requirement for learning a knife?" Yang Yu's heart tightened and he replied, "Ruthless." Squeak! The rocking chair stopped, and old man Wei's eyes were faint, with a coolness that made Yang Prison a little hairy. "Tonight, let the old man take a look at it." "What?" Yang Yu was taken aback. Old man Wei slowly got up and paced with his hands behind his back. "This old man is an executioner. If you want to learn the old man's martial arts, of course. Murder." The darkness of night shrouded the city of Montenegro like a gauze, and the bright moonlight poured down like mercury all over the ground, flowing into thousands of households. Refining progress, 67/100, taking a last look at the progress bar on the wall of the cauldron, Yang Yu's mind was relieved, and he had returned to reality. After refining several times in succession, he also mastered the trick to end refining at any time, so as not to exhaust all his physical strength before coming out. The further you go, the more difficult it seems. Yang Prison sighed. After a day of refining, he came to the courtyard by the moonlight. Listening to the heavy breathing of the mother-in-law next door, Yang Yu carefully picked up a bucket of water and poured it on the sharpening stone. Holding the broken knife was a friction. This old man, ruthless. No wonder a rough man like Huan sees him like a mouse sees a cat. Recalling the chilling eyes of old man Wei in the daytime, Yang Yu only felt a little chill on his back. This old executioner who has killed all his life is definitely the most indifferent to human life he has ever seen in his 2 lifetimes. None of them abide by the law. Yang Yu gritted his teeth. In his previous life, he studied hard for 12 years, and was already a freshman about to enter the law school, although he had not had time to go to school for a day. But deep down, he is still a good student who abides by the law. Shasha, the broken knife slashed across the whetstone, making a sour sound. Promoting the righteousness of democracy. Continue to sharpen the knife. Justify yourself first. Sharpening. Yang Yu's heart was beating like a drum, and his knives were not sharp enough. Unhappy with the grinding, he simply threw the knife aside, picked up the inferior wine he bought during the day at his feet, put a stone on it, raised his head and took a sip. Cough cough, the inferior wine drank in the stomach, and a wave of heat rushed to the face along with the drink. After coughing a few times, Yang Yu raised the gourd again, and soon he drank it all. It's really hard to drink. Throwing away the gourd, picking up the broken knife, Yang Yu looked up at the sky. The wind was blowing the clouds, covering the moon, and for a while, the night seemed to be a little darker. Today, what a black day! After burping heavily, Yang Yu raised his knife and walked into the night staggeringly. At night, the city of Haishan was silent, with only sporadic barking of dogs and meowing of cats. Walking staggeringly in the alley, Yang Yu was at a loss. Recalling the novels and movies he had read in his previous life, the protagonist would be as decisive as a different person as soon as he crossed over, and he couldn't help shaking his head in his heart. He was clearly a person who had never killed a chicken before. Perhaps with Huan's deterrence, they will stop. The messy thoughts in Yang Yu's heart were flying. Before he knew it, he had passed through several alleys and came to the outer city's Zikan district. With his ear pressed against the door, he could hear groans faintly. Across the courtyard, he couldn't really hear it, but he could vaguely tell that this person was Wang Lu. Wang Liuchen is here with his concubine, he doesn't even close the door. Yang Yu has a heart in his heart. Surprised by old man Wei's well-informed information, he pushed forward and entered the courtyard. Light, waist is about to break. Wang Lu was lying on the bed naked, screaming and moaning. The woman who was wiping the inferior blush gently applied medicine for him, and she was also calling out, "Butcher who killed 1,000 knives, how could he be so cruel? It hurts me to death." Wang Lu pounded on the bedboard in pain, trembling all over, and sweating all over his head. "Stop howling, it's hard for outsiders to hear." The woman glanced out the window with some worry. "Your mother. I was beaten like this for your sake. Are you afraid of being heard? What's the matter? I can't see anyone." Wang Lu was instantly furious, and slapped the woman in the face with a backhand. Ouch! The woman staggered after being beaten, and when she came back to her senses, she immediately started shouting, "Okay, Wang Lu, how dare you hit the old lady? It's not the time for you to go to the old lady's door. I will beat you to death." This woman was very savage, and Wang Lu lost his temper after a flick of her teeth and claws, and even begged for mercy. After wiping the medicine, Wang Lu struggled to sit up, his face twisted with pain. Bastard Hu Wan, it's so dark. That little in Yang prison actually got on with that old executioner, now it's a little troublesome. The woman pulled her hair together, a little worried, but also a little resentful. She also knew that Yang prison was an apprentice under Wei Heman, but there are not many apprentices under Wei Heman, and there are very few who can be accepted by him. 3 years of apprenticeship and high tuition fees. If you have this money, you might as well go to the martial arts hall to learn some martial arts. Can't be provoked, can't you hide? Reaching out his hand, he picked up the wine bowl and took a sip. Wang Lu felt aggrieved and resentful, such a little beast, he actually caused such a big somersault. Feeling embarrassed, but helpless. Everyone said that he was a jerk, but Wang Lu knew very well who could be offended and who could not be offended. Otherwise, he would have died in the stinky ditch like those seniors long ago. A half-hearted child who is dead and has no support, he naturally takes care of it, but Hu Wan, he really can't afford it. Not to mention the old Wei Huai. Will this give up? Yang Yu, who was listening against the wall, moved in his heart when he heard the woman snort coldly. How can it be so easy? The woman put on her clothes, glanced out the window subconsciously, and said in a low voice, "Do you think the patriarch is interested in those fields? Is not it?" Wang Lu leaned forward and hugged the woman, his mind became a little more active. Of course not. The woman pursed her lips and said, "That little farmland is our heart. What the clan wants, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is a place for prison guards. Jailer? We're all fathers and sons. Could it be that you're prepared?" Wang Lu gestured his neck. Then who knows? The woman shook her head. The clan originally wanted to force the old lady to take back the deed of the land in the name of handling funeral affairs, and then adopt the little beast in the name of the clan's old man. Wonderful. The law can't go to the family affairs, not to mention Hu Wan, even Wei He, Sanchi Lu can't control it. When the time comes, he. The two of them in the house started talking one by one, but Yang prison outside the door was his chest heaving and he was furious. So ruthless, so ruthless. Yang Yuki's face turned pale. This is really going to wipe out their family. I'm afraid this group of people has already arranged the future for themselves and their mother-in-law. Stop talking about that. I've endured it for a few days, but I'm dying. Oh. Are you not in pain anymore? How can you still remember the pain? Death. Hearing the foul language in the house, Yang Yu couldn't hold back his anger any longer, took a few steps back, and rammed into the closed wooden door with force. Boom. The door was knocked open. With the candle light in this room, Yang Yu saw the men and women hugging each other and nibbling at one glance, his eyes were ruthless. With a swipe of his waist, the broken knife was lifted, and it slashed towards Wang Lu. "You!" Wang Lu was frightened and shuddered, he pushed the woman over, and turned around to grab the knife standing beside the bed. Puff! The hot blood sprayed all over his face, wetting the rags that Yang prison covered his face, and dyeing his eyes red. Die! Click! The razor crossed the sky, and the rain fell. A young man in a saponite suit walked out of the courtyard, opened his umbrella, and shielded the middle-aged man from the raindrops. Wang Tiaoyu, the two deceased, the man's name is Wang Lu, who is a prankster on the street, and the woman's name is Wang Yunhua, who is his concubine. The young arrest quickly reported the case in a succinct manner. The perpetrator must have a background in martial arts. The woman's neck was slashed diagonally, and the man's head was beheaded by a knife from the back. The murder weapon should be a short knife. Wang Fobao didn't say a word with a stern face, and walked quickly into the courtyard. Several arresting officers were carefully looking for clues, and Zozo was doing an autopsy. Wang Tiaoyu, the murderer, is very cautious. In addition, the rain is coming so fast that there are no traces in the courtyard. The perpetrator should be an old hand, with neat tactics and extreme brutality. Another arrest came forward to report, the body of the deceased has been turned over, and there is no softness in the house. Maybe it's asking for money. Do not. Gently scanning the courtyard, Wang Fobao pointed to the only footprint in the courtyard that was never washed away by the rain, and said, the murderer should be the wooden door that broke open with force here. Judging from his body shape, he should be a little thin. He may have a foundation in martial arts, but his methods are not very clever. Several arresting officers also looked at the footprints in the courtyard. The wound on the corpse seems to be caused by a short knife, but its shape is more like a standard yamen waist knife. As for it looks like a short knife, it may also be. Wang Fobao was silent, but there were ripples in his eyes. Look for people and collect the corpses. If you don't have relatives or friends, wrap them in a mat and throw them to the West Mountain. Reaching out his hand to take out his subordinate's oil paper umbrella, Wang Fobao didn't say much, turned around and left here, walking into the wind and rain. Yes, I have to pay for another seat. Seeing that Wang Fobao was far away, several of the arresting officers glanced at each other, all of them hurting a little. Before they came, they had already checked it out. The two were widowed and rented in someone else's yard, and they were looted again. Even if they had relatives and friends, they wouldn't necessarily collect their bodies. It's all money. Swing the knife. Swing the knife. Swing the knife. In the cauldron of gluttony, Yang Yu completely forgot himself, waving a broken knife in an airtight manner, completely immersed in the practice of the knife. She vented the fear and restlessness in her heart after the murder. Ding! I don't know how long it took, until the progress bar on the wall of the cauldron changed again, and he slowly stopped the knife. Opening his eyes again, looking at the familiar roof, Yang Yu was a little stunned. After venting overnight, he had calmed down in his heart, but for a while, he was still a little uncomfortable. This is not the fear after killing people, but the fear brought by overthrowing the worldview that he had established 20 years ago in his previous life. I am a law-abiding person. Wei He, is he really just an executioner? Or? Putting his clothes on and sitting up, Yang Yu was still a little stunned. Recalling Wei He's understatement of human life, he was still somewhat at a loss. Dong dong dong! There was a gentle knock on the door. A voice came from outside the door, Sister-in-law, are you at home? It's me, Buddha Treasure. Buddha Treasure? Wang catches the head. Yang Yu's heart tightened, the tip of his spine was cold, and a layer of goosebumps couldn't help but develop on his body. After all, he was working in the yamen, so he naturally knew about Wang Fobao. This Wang Zayatu is ruthless and ruthless. He is very good at catching prisoners, and his methods are ruthless. He is a famous cruel official in Haishan City. It is even bigger than the name of the county's parent Sanchi Lu, who may not be promoted once a month. Didn't it say that he was seriously injured on the way to Qingzhou escorting the prisoner? Is this all right? The cruel official came to the door just after killing someone, and Yang Yu couldn't help but feel a little flustered in his heart. Grandma Yang had already opened the door, wiped her hands, and took the wine and meat handed over. I'm here, what are you bringing? It's getting cold, sister-in-law, remember to add some clothes. Wang Fobao entered the courtyard with an umbrella, and at the same time greeted Granny Yang. He lifted his eyelids, and his stern gaze had already passed through the window and hit Yang Yu. What a sharp look! Yang Yu's heart trembled, his face was still, but the hairs on his back actually exploded. Remember, remember! Granny Yang reluctantly squeezed out her face, and said that she was going to do funeral affairs for her old man tomorrow, so he must come. Brother Yang! Wang Fobao's tone paused, his face softened a little, and there was a look of shame in his eyes. Brother Yang, he's just missing. Looking at the old woman who was much more haggard than before, Wang Fobao's tone was condensed and he couldn't continue. The jailer did not have the responsibility of escorting the prisoners, but because of the many casualties, he asked them to pass. Did not expect. Even if he disappears and becomes a tablet, it's still a thought after all, right? If he doesn't come back. The old woman's expression was gloomy, and she called Wang Fobao into the room with a strong spirit, and then went to the kitchen to prepare meals. Wang catch the head. Yang Yu suppressed the panic in his heart, stepped forward to greet him, and thanked him for approving his leave these days. Good job. Glancing at the empty house that was almost sold out, Wang Fobao's tone was cold and stern. The knives are good, but unfortunately they are too immature. What? Yang Yu was at a loss, as if he couldn't understand, Wang Zaiatu, but what happened in the city? Murder, maybe it was a moment of anger, maybe it was old man Wei's request. But Yang prison is not a stunned young man. When he went there, he masked to avoid all possibilities of being discovered, and quickly cleaned up after the murder. She thought that even if she had motives and no evidence, the Yamen would not be able to hold her. 2 people died in the west of the city. It just so happened that one was Wang Yunhua, who came to the door before, and the other, Wang Lu, who wanted to block you at the city gate. What's even more coincidental is that both of them were killed by a broken knife, and looking at the angle of the knife injury, the perpetrator's height and size are much the same as yours. Wang Fobao stared deeply at Yang Yu. Do you think it's a coincidence? Ah! Was Wang Lu killed? Yang Yu was nervous in his heart, but his face flashed with anger. Good death. This Wang Lu is rampant in the streets. I don't know how many people he has bullied. Maybe he was killed by passing heroes to eliminate evil. There are many kinds of people. Some people are incoherent when they are flustered, while others become more calm when they are nervous. Yang prison is the latter. As he answered, he recalled what he had done last night, thinking that he had left no trace. Then, beat him to death and refused to admit it. Wang Lu has more to die for. Wang Fobao nodded and seemed to agree. Yang Yu was stunned for a moment, and saw this cold-faced and cruel official pacing the room to the window, reaching out and holding the broken knife on the windowsill in his hand. You washed it very well, but unfortunately the smell of blood is not so easy to wash off. With his back to Yang prison, Wang Fobao looked out the window at the wind and rain, and seemed to have a feeling, something like Wang Lu might be damned. But if everyone in the world were like you, what would it be like? At this point, Wang Fobao flicked his wrist, and the broken knife sank into the wind and rain with a hum, and plunged straight into the yellow mud without the handle. This is Brother Yang's pension. Take your mother-in-law to find a place in the inner city. Wang Fobao took out a cloth bag from his arms and slapped it on the windowsill with a pop. Turn around, hold an umbrella, and go out. Yang Yu watched in a daze as the figures in the rain drifted away, but there was still a voice echoing in his ears, You, do it yourself. Wang Fobao came and went in a hurry, but Yang Yu couldn't calm down for a long time. Granny Yang walked into the house wiping her hands, and said with some resentment, You kid, why didn't you keep Wang Shitu? Where can you stay? Yang prison smiled reluctantly. There were ups and downs several times a day, and he only felt that his body was a little weak, and while his mother-in-law was not paying attention, he even ate a few pebbles to get better. The old man's life and death are uncertain, and I don't know if he will be able to come back. If you are a little baby without support, how can you stay in the yamen? The old woman babbled, her face full of worry. Mother-in-law. Yang Yu's heart warmed. He held the old woman's hand, and said, Wang should have sent a pension. Pension. The old woman was stunned, and the hand holding the purse trembled a little. Seeing that her mother-in-law became sad again, Yang prison hurriedly changed the subject. Mother-in-law, Wang Zaiata said that the outer city is not very peaceful, so he wants us to move to the inner city. Move place. The old woman nodded blankly, I'm going to move. The 2 brothers at the end of the alley have contracted a serious illness together. I'm afraid they won't survive the summer. Yang Yu was silent. It's only halfway through this year, and more people in the outer city have died of illness than in previous years. Recalling Hu Wan's words that day, he felt a little urgency in his heart. This year, it's getting more and more sad. The old woman sighed sadly. Then, when the rain stops, I'll go find a tooth shop to rent a house. Yang Yu was careful, for fear of making his mother-in-law sad. The old woman is getting old and her health is not very good. If she is stimulated again, she is afraid that she will get sick. Listen to you. The old woman was not very interested. It rained all morning, and it didn't clear until noon. Yang Yu hurriedly grabbed a few mouthfuls of rice, and carried his money to the old yard. With just a flick of the hand, it's inserted so deeply. I'm afraid this Wang Zaiatu is also a master who has changed his blood. Yang Yu was so tired that he was sweating profusely, so he dug up the hard yellow soil and saw the broken knife with the hilt underneath. There was a bit of stammering in my heart. After a while of busy work, he dug out the broken knife and washed it before going out to the inner city. The location of Yaxing is the most prosperous South Street in the inner city and even in Haishan City. This street is quite prosperous, with all kinds of facilities such as restaurants, tea houses, and medical halls. The crowd is surging, a sight that can never be seen outside the city. It's like two worlds. Looking at the brightly dressed pedestrians, Yang Prison let out a heavy sigh and wandered the street. With the hard work of the past few days, he is not far from completely refining the broken knife. He came here just to try his luck and see if he can find other ingredients. After many days of groping, he already knew that what the cauldron of gluttony refined was only the spirit left on the object. Such a big city of Montenegro, shouldn't there be no such thing? It's a pity that Yang Prison went back and forth for 2 times, but he still couldn't find even a single ingredient that might have spirit. Without him, South Street would have no antiquities at all. I came to the wrong place, I should go to North Street. Yang Yu shook his head helplessly and turned his head inadvertently, but he couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. A tall and thin man in white clothes was staring at him coldly at the end of the street, and when he saw him turn back, he disappeared into the crowd again. Is he following me? Bai Yi, is this person taught by Lian Sheng? Yang Yu's heart tightened, and he was a little bit puzzled. He never provokes the people of Lian Sheng Jiao, how could they follow him? If you want to make money, you don't have any money left. The old man's pension is not a small amount for other people. How can poor Sheng Jiao look at it? Weird, weird. Yang Yu thought about it in his heart, he turned a corner, left the Yaxing, and didn't go to North Street. He walked slowly, but he went straight to Old Man Wei's alley. Knocked on the door. Squeaky, the old monkey Wang Cai yelled and opened the door. Yang Prison entered the courtyard, and today it was extremely deserted. There was not even a single person on the training ground, only Old Man Wei was lying on the rocking chair, half asleep. Do you know why the old man asked you to kill? Before stepping into the martial arts field, Old Man Wei's voice drifted over. I don't know. Yang Prison shook his head. It seems that you haven't found it yet. Old Man Wei half squinted his eyes and shook the reclining chair. Any martial art is created, it is the creator's intention to overcome the enemy and win, or even to kill. Yang Prison took 2 steps, picked up a pony and sat down, knowing that he really passed the test. Any martial art contains the spirit and temperament of the founder, and if future generations learn it, it will change the character invisibly. Old Man Wei's voice was neither in a hurry nor slow, and said, a year ago, you were a wild dog on the side of the road. You never dared to take a step, but now, a year later, you dare to kill people at night. Is the change in it just because you couldn't drink a few mouthfuls of horse urine? Change personality. Yang Yu's heart was shocked, and he was a little surprised. In his previous life, he had heard that a timid child would become daring after learning methods such as fitness, sanda, and boxing. At this moment, pondering, it is nothing more than with a sharp blade, killing intentions spontaneously. This old man has killed a lot of people in his life. Naturally, this means of knowing will not be very good. You are considered a seedling. This old man doesn't want to ruin you, so I will try it out. Wei He stretched his back, nonchalantly. Yang Yu was silent for a moment, before Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com said, but what if I was killed, or if I was arrested and sent to prison? Wei He straightened up, looked at Yang Yu, and said lightly, naturally, it has nothing to do with this old man. Yang Prison smiled wryly. In his heart, he became more and more certain that this old Wei was by no means a good person. If you have any questions, just ask. Wei He yawned. Yang Yu made up his mind and asked what he most wanted to know. This disciple wants to know how to exchange blood. Since you have passed this test, you are considered to be the disciple of this old man. Anyway, I will say a few more words for you. Old man Wei pondered a little, then waved his hand and called out prosperity. The old monkey made a squeak from the tree and ran into the house in a flash. Learning martial arts is nothing more than practicing moves, training the body, and increasing vigor, but there are limits to this. Even someone as talented as Huan is only as strong as a buffalo. Wei He took the yellow paper from the old monkey's paw and shook his hand. Exchanging blood is different. That's a real rebirth. After this level, you can be considered a warrior, and you can hang out in the inner and outer cities. Reborn. Yang Yu's eyes lit up when he heard it, and he guessed, how to change this blood? Is it possible? Is it a medicinal bath? Good. Wei He was a little surprised and nodded. Ordinary methods can't touch the bone marrow at all. If you want to exchange blood, naturally you need medicinal herbs to help. Wow! Having said that, he shook the yellow paper in his hand. This is a recipe for exchange blood. The old man can give you a copy, but where do you get the money to buy medicinal herbs? Eat dirt, but it can't be exchanged for blood.